Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. We are from Group 1. Today, we will present to you the topic 1 and topic 2 in International Trade and Finance. Before we'll start, let me introduce our group members. First, YOON PENG. Second, SHARMA, anak lelaki SIVALINGAM. Third, GEOK. Fourth, Muhammad Khairul Anuar bin ABDULLAH. And the last one is SYAZANA BINTI MALEK. Here the topic what we presenting about. Topic 1 is Introduction to International Trade and Finance. And topic 2 is Method of Trade Settlement in International Trade. Let's look at the topic 1. We are focusing on theory of international trade, and the economy, risk in international trade, role of banks in international trade, and lastly, assistance provided by government agencies in facilitating international trade growth. From all this, we can identify the factors for the existence, hindrances, risks associated, and the role of bank in international trade. Next, in the topic 2, we will present to you about first, open account or consignment, payment in advance, barter trade or bilateral payment arrangement, documentary collection, documentary credit, and lastly, supply chain solution. From all this, we can know that the concern of the buyer and seller, method of trade settlement, and other methods that involve in international trade. Without further ado, let me start the presentation with the theory of international trade. International trade is the exchange of goods and services between countries, at least two countries. Trading globally gives consumer and countries the opportunity to be exposed to goods and services not available in their own countries or more expensive domestically. The components of commerce that involve in international trade, among them are raw materials, processed materials, finished goods, and services. It can be from the original producer to final consumer with the right time, with the right place, right price, and the quantity as prescribed. Next, we must know the differences between internal trade and international trade. Internal or domestic trade refers to the exchange of goods and services within the geographical boundaries of a nation, while international trade refers to the exchange of goods and services between two or more countries. Movement of labor between regions of a country will be easy and common, but this will be not so in the case of international trade. The citizens of one country are subject to the same system of national and local taxation, to the same regulation and laws regarding industry and labor. Even if capital and labor move freely between countries so that wages and interest charge profits and etc. were the same everywhere, and the general level of real cost might be lower in one country than another because of certain superior advantages and provided by the system government. People possess a very good knowledge of the conditions of trade in their own country, but they cannot be conversant with the condition obtained in other countries. This lack of knowledge may hinder international trade. Trade between countries is not free as in the case of different regions of the same country. We move to the next subtopic, which is international trade and the economy. International economics deals with the economic relation among nations. The resulting interdependence is very important to the economic well-being of the most nations of the world, and it is on the increase. International trade was key to the rise of the global economy. For consumer, it meets the needs and wants of consumer. Second, it provides choices to consumer. Third, availability of quality low-cost products. Fourth, helps upgrade consumers' living conditions. And fifth, creation of job opportunities. For producer, first, it widens market areas. Second, encourages mass production. Third, enables the exchange of information and technology. Fourth, availability of wide sources of raw materials. And fifth, it must compete to stay in business. And lastly, for the nation or country, it will increase national income and government revenue. Second, brings together international understanding and cooperation. Third, increases foreign exchange earning. Fourth, create jobs opportunities and reduces unemployment. Fifth, promotes international specialization. And lastly, 6. Overcome the problems of shortage of the raw materials and expertise. Last part, advantages. Export create jobs and boost economic growth, as well as give domestic companies more experience in producing for foreign markets. Over time, companies gain a competitive advantage in global trade. Research shows that exporters are more productive than companies that focus on domestic trade. While disadvantages in this is the only way to boost export is to make trade easier overall. Government do this by reducing tariffs and other blocks to imports that reduces job in domestic industries that can't compete on a global scale. That also leads to job outsourcing, which is when companies relocate call centers, technology offices, and manufacturing to countries with a lower cost of living. As a solution, trade protectionism is rarely the answer. High tariff only protect domestic industries in the short term, and in the long term, global corporations will hire the cheapest workers wherever they are in the world to make higher profit. A better solution than protectionism is the inclusion of regulation within trade agreement that protect against the disadvantages. That's all from my part. Next, I will pass to the SYAZANA binti Abdul Malik to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is SYAZANA binti Abdul Malik and my metric number is 281907. Today I will like to share knowledge about risk in international trade and role of bank in international trade. Businesses involved in international trade have to deal not just with risk locally but also other businesses development risks such as ethics, transportation, intellectual property, credit, currency, and a lot more. These risks can obstruct the smooth running of the business, and hence appropriate measures need to be taken to limit their effects. Here are 6 risks commonly faced by businesses involved in international trade and the effective way to manage them. Okay, first is credit risk. Credit is a controversy or is the risk associated with not collecting an account receivable. There are numerous ways in which businesses can guard themselves against this risk while expanding to global markets. Under this credit risk, I will explain about procedure when involved in credit risk, which is take payment is full or a decent percentage of money upfront, which is taking 100% of the amount owed or a fair percentage before rendering the services at the time of the placement of an order can be used to cut down administrative expenses and finance charge. This eliminates the risk of non-payment, although this may be difficult for new businesses and exporters. It can be worked out with little negotiations. Under this credit risk, they have a letter of credit. This refers to a commitment issued by a financial institution wherein the institution agrees to pay a set amount to the service product provider in exchange for delivery within a set time frame. This offers protection to both the seller and the buyer. It includes a detailed description of the shipment as well as the term of sale. Okay, second is foreign exchange risk. This usually concerns the account payable and receivable for contracts that are or soon would be enforced. Foreign exchange rates are in flux constantly, hence businesses would be forced to make conversions of the funds generated overseas at rates lower than what is budgeted. This is the reason why it is crucial for businesses to have an appropriate exchange policy in place. This will help in stabilizing profit margins over sales made. Second is next is ethics risk. It is vital to maintain a high ethical standard when offering any product or service in a global market. Companies may face certain questions pertaining to their values at any point while doing international trade. Social conditions and customs vary from country to country, and hence it is necessary to be especially vigilant. You need to make sure that our foreign suppliers and partners adhere to your values and rules regardless of where they operate from. Fourth is intellectual property risk. These risks involve third party making outrageous use of the strategic information of a business or property that affects the value of service or products offered by a business either directly or indirectly. These risks increase tenfold when doing business overseas because of the difficulty that exists in defeating business right remotely. This can be avoided by registering the corporate name as well as the trademark before signing an agreement in any country. It will also be beneficial to constantly modify and improve your service or products to remain ahead of the competition. Last but not least is shipping risk. Whether you are shipping goods abroad or locally, you may face issues such as contamination, seizure, accident, vandalism, theft, loss, and breakage. Before shipping any goods to the buyers, you need to make sure to have sufficient insurance. Lastly, without commercial bank, the international finance and import-export industry would not exist. Commercial bank make possible the reliable transfer of funds and translation of business practice between different countries and different customs all over the world. The global nature of commercial banking also makes possible the distribution of value economic and business information among customers and the capital market of all countries. Then the other part is I will explain this picture. Based on this picture, we can see that the flow export and import make a deal. First, exporter and importer make a deal, and then exporter export the goods to the importer. So when importer want their payment, they must submit the documents to the advising bank. Next, the advising bank forward the document that requested by importer bank. Then issuing bank deliver the important document to the importer to get a payment. After importer check all the document and the document is true, the importer give a payment to the issuer bank to handle and give to advising bank. Lastly, advising bank make a payment to the exporter. That's all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ping and my matrix number is 271939. For my part, I was in charge of week 6 and week 7's topic. For week 6, I talk about our Malaysia agency, MATRADE, an agency that helps to facilitate international growth, international trade growth. And secondly, in week 7, I talk about open account, which is one of the trade settlement methods that we have covered in our lectures. So for MATRADE is actually, it stands for Malaysia External Trade Development Corporation. So it was established 28 years ago with the aim to help our fellow businessmen from Malaysia with the necessary skills through programs and incentives before they eventually step into the international market. So there are 4 core services that they provide, and the 4 are exporter development, exporter promotion, trade and market information, and lastly is trade advisory and support. So let's go in depth into the 4 core services. For the first one is exporter development. This is very important, especially for the exporters that are just beginners, those domestic exporters that just newly are going into the international level. So this is where MATRADE prepares them and let them know about the standard, about the technology, the design that they have to adhere when they eventually publish their products on the international level. And secondly is the exporter promotions. So this one is to help the exporters to elevate and bring up their names, spread the name of the product, the name of the company through trade missions and trade fair, international trade fairs. And third one is trade and market information. So if when it comes to the time where exporters do not know what is really happening in the global market, in the international market, so Martrade actually have a center for them to look up and inquiry for the latest information about the international market. And lastly is trade advisory and support. In case if these exporters need on-demand inquiries, they can always call into the service line to get the latest updates or assistance. I believe that our favorite shopping platforms are usually the very common one like Lazada and Shopee, Zalora, and etc. But for what you see here is the G2U is actually one of Martrade's members. And this G2U has actually recently has participated themselves in the AOSD ASEAN Online Sales Day, where they help to promote and publish local and domestic products and goods. Not only do they just publish Malaysians goods, but they also publish goods from other countries, example like Japan, Taiwan. So people from the ASEAN country eventually get to shop products across different nations. So moving on to week 7 topic about open account. So this trade settlement method is actually most preferred by the buyers because buyer only get to, they are allowed to make payment after they have received all the goods. But of course, if this is the payment, if this is the method that preferred by the buyers, this is not the method, definitely not the method that is preferred by the seller, because they are afraid, they might not get the payment as agreed, right? And by sending out this their goods through open account, actually sellers are required to deliver all the necessary documents. It's unlike letter of credit or collection. So while they are about to ship out their goods, they also have to put all the important documents along with the goods. And not only do this, not only do seller and buyer can come into this agreement or this transaction or this method, but it can also be an inter-company transaction. Means like if a company wish to send to or deliver goods from the parent company, they can do so through open account. So of course, when this method is least preferred by the seller, seller and buyers, they need to have a very strong relationship. They have to have a very reliable relationship and trust in order to conduct this open account. And of course, if seller eventually do not get the payment as agreed, or buyer refuse to pay after they receive their goods, it is actually very costly if seller wish to take any legal action.
My name is YOON, matrix number 26962. I will explain about the next trade settlement method. That is payment in advance. Payment in advance means that the seller demands a payment from his buyer before he is prepared to ship the goods. In this way, the importer and exporter sign a sale contract. We agree to a settlement in advance. The importer made the first step by reminding the payment from the purchase on the goods to the exporter by reminding a check, demand draft, and telegraphic transfer. After this, the exporter will send out the goods to the buyer after receiving the payment. This method is totally different with open account. Payment in advance put the importer in a disadvantageous position. The importer needs to take 100% of risk because the exporter has total control on the shipment. Importer cannot sure whether the seller will actually ship the goods when already paid the payment, and also the goods can be shipped according to the specification in the order. By this method also give an advantage to importer. Which is important are easy to secure supplier because the supplier will like this method. On the other hand, this method is the most preferred method by exporter. This can avoid the risk of no payment when the exporter has refused to go to the importer. But it also makes exporter difficult to attract buyer because buyer will worry about no receipt cost. So when we use the payment and advice, this depends on the trust on the importer. The importer has to trust that the exporter will definitely send him the goods and then the goods will be on the same specification. There are several reasons why the importer trusts or has to trust the exporter. It could be a new relationship between the importer and exporter. Exporter not sure about the credit on the importer, so he need to avoid no payment risk. Besides, it also can be a smaller transaction from importer. It is less attractive to exporter to bear the risk, so the risk is switched to importer. Next, it also can be a strong seller market reason. The supplier on center gold is limited, so the seller may be justified in asking for an advantageous payment. Thank you. Next, I will introduce the next trade settlement method. That is bilateral payment agreement. As short form is BPA. BPA is a mechanism from the settlement on net monetary obligation arising from trade between two countries. BPS is capable on shielding our economy well from the flat money rise. First objective on BPS is to encourage trade with emerging economy and undeveloped countries. This is because some countries' currencies are not traded on international foreign exchange system. Their banking settlement system with Malaysia has not been established and also difficult to evaluate their commission rates. So, bilateral payment agreement can help them to trade in a same way. Under the BPA, a settlement arrangement is in the process whereby the net trade balancing between the two countries are settled in an agreed currency on a periodic basis. Next, bilateral payment agreement also allow Malaysian banks to capitalize on trading opportunity with culture under BPA. For example, Bank Negara Malaysia signed a bilateral payment agreement with Bank Mandiri Indonesia to facilitate the promotion on trade and establishment on correspondent banking relationships between Malaysia and Indonesia. Next, I will introduce the common feature on bilateral payment agreement. Let's to know more about the BPA. First, for the BPA, the central bank on both the exporting country and the importing country will appoint commission bank in their country to provide the BPA to the exporter and importer. So those banks are called participating bank. Secondly, the central bank will determine their respective credit limit, which will depend on the trade volume of the two countries wish to trade under BPA for a given period. Third, all trading transactions on the BPA are done in US dollar. Fourth, export and import transactions are supported by irrevocable letter of credit. The terms and conditions on the letter of credit cannot be amended or cancelled. Fifth, every financial document on other documents like such as commission document, transportation consumer document, and official document must reveal the indication that the transactions are done under the BPA. Sixth, trade settlements are done through central bank on the exporting in the importing country, so the BPA participating bank on the true trading country do not settle the payment with each other. Instead, their central bank will become a reimbursing bank. 7. For the exporter, the central bank will pay in US dollar. The payment is given to exporter through his bank. The central bank will claim for reimbursement from the central bank on the importing country in the agreed time. Next, for the importer, then the central bank will correct payment from he in US dollar. The correction is done through the BPF participating bank in his country. His central bank will remind the money to the central bank on the exporting country in the agreed time. Next, both central bank will settle amount themselves in the agreed time, usually is every 3 months. Lastly, when there's a problem developed between the exporter and the importer, central bank on both countries will help them to trace out the problem. Yes, that's all from me. Thank you.
So I'm SHARMA here, and now I'm gonna lead the presentation of documentary collection. A documentary collection can be known as a method of trade finance which exporter banks forwards document to importers bank and collects payment for shipped goods. Documentary collection is also less common than advance cash payment and open account terms, particularly in countries with weak enforcement of contracts. And documents against payment require the importer to pay the amount of draft. Side documents against acceptance require payment by a specific dates. There are two types of document collection here. One is document against payment, require the importer to pay the face amount of draft at side. In other words, the payment must be made to the bank when the buyer is presented with the draft and before any shipping documents are released. This is the most common form of documentary collection because of the reduced risk for the seller. The second one is document against acceptance, which require the importer to pay on a specific date once the buyer accepts the time draft. The bank releases the document to the buyer. There are 4 steps on using the document collection. First step will be the sales is made when the buyer and seller agrees on the amount to be paid. The shipping details and the transaction will be a documentary collection. Then the exporters delivers the goods to the port or location where the merchandise will be exported from, which is usually through a freight forwarder. The second step will be the documents are prepared and sent to the exporter's bank, which is also known as a remitting bank. The exporter's bank then forwards the documents to the importer's bank, which is known as the collecting bank. The third step on using documentary collection is the importer's or buyer's bank receive the document and notice the buyers that document have been received. The buyer's bank requires payment from the buyers in exchange for the documents. Once the buyer's bank has been paid or the buyers accepted the time draft, the bank releases the documents to the buyer and the buyer uses the document to collect the merchandise. And now we're going to look at another topic which is called documentary credit. A documentary credit can be defined as a written undertaking given by a bank, the issuing bank, to the seller, which is the beneficiary, on the instruction of the buyer, the applicant, to buy at sight or at a determined future date to a stated amount of money. Such undertakings are conditional upon the beneficiary compliance and are satisfied by a complying presentation of document. There are total 8 types of documentary credit here. The first one will be irrevocable documentary credit. This documentary credit can only be amended or cancelled with the agreement of the beneficiary and with one is in the place of the confirming bank. The second will be a confirmed documentary credit, which is normally requested by a seller at the time of agreeing the sales of goods or agreeing to provide services or performance, and is usually a preconditional inserted in the pro forma invoice or sales contract. And now we are going to look at the fourth type of documentary credit, which is the standby letter of credit, which is used to cover and mitigate many risks that can occur in finalizing a contract between a buyer and a seller. And the fifth type of documentary credit is red and green clause documentary credit, which is such credit contains a special clause that allows the seller to draw on the credit prior to shipment of goods and presentation of documents. The sixth will be transferable document credit. This type of credits allows the seller to transfer the credit fully or partially to one or more third parties in order to be effective on the credit must clearly state that is transferable. And now let's look at the last two types of documentary credit, which is the revolving documentary credit, which is used to reduce the administrative workload for repetitive purchase at the same kind of goods from the same supplier or regular intervals. And silent confirmation documentary credit, which the private arrangement between the bank and the seller in which the advising bank adds a conditional guarantee of payment to the beneficiary without the knowledge of issuing bank. Last, we're gonna look at supply chain solution, which is the last topic. So now we're gonna look at the wave of supply chain solution, which the wave 1 will be supply solution for receivable finance, and the wave 2 will be buyer's solution on approving payables, and wave 3 will be the convergence of buyer and supplier solution, which is into a new business model where buyers and suppliers in a supply chain have competing financial interests. The buyer wants to pay as late as possible and the supplier wants to be paid as early as possible. Supply chain finance is a means to bridge those conflicting interests, providing a range of financing and risk mitigation solution designed to optimize the working capital.